Look, I have a lathe. Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome to my shop. Now I've been working in this shop for about 2 years now, and I've been doing a lot of things and restoring and moving things around. I'm finally getting the shop the way I want it. But one tool that I don't have that I really want to have is a lathe. Now when I used to work with power tools, I had a lathe, and there are a lot of fun things you can do with a lathe that you just really have a hard time doing other ways. And I want to make a hand tool lathe, a foot powered lathe. Now eventually I want to make a large flywheel treadle driven lathe, but you know, there's a lot of other things that go into that, and it's a little bit more complicated of a build, and I want to get this thing up and going, particularly because Christmas is around the corner, and a lathe is a great opportunity to make projects very quickly that you can then give as gifts. So I'm hoping to have this lathe up and running in the next couple weeks, and then I'll be doing several videos on how to turn on a spring pole lathe. Now a spring pole lathe is what I'm going to be building here, and I'll be talking about the plans I'll be using in a little bit, but basically it is a reciprocating lathe. So half the time it's going the direction you want, and half the time it's going the opposite direction because there's a spring up above that is pulling down on a rope. Rope goes around the work and then down to your foot. And so you're pulling it, and you are working. It's a very, very old method of woodworking. As long as people have been documenting anything, they've been finding documents on how a spring pole lathe or reciprocating lathe has been made. So we're going to jump into this project. Now this video is going to be a little bit of the introductory and talking about what I want to be doing, and then I'm going to go through breaking down this board into stock. Now all my plans for this lathe I'm actually getting out of Popular Woodworking. Their issue in August of 2016 has a design by Roy Underhill to make this simple spring pole lathe. And it's designed to most all come out of a 2x12, and I am looking forward to digging into this and basically building it just like he did, but with a few modifications, and it should be a lot of fun. This design from Roy Underhill is designed to use a single 2x12 by 12 foot long, so this ends up being actually 1.5 inches by 12 foot long, and I'm going to be making almost all the material out of this. I bought this from the local hardware store, the local big box store, and almost everything is going to come out of this board. There's going to be a few scrap pieces that I'm going to have to pull from my scrap and stock. The only other thing I really had to get lumber-wise was a piece of hickory. And Menards, my local big box store, has this stick of hickory. Now it's 3/4 inch by 1.5 inches. And the plans call for 1 inch by 1 inch square. But I'm going to deviate from the plans a little bit so that I can buy things at the hardware store. So this stick was $7, and the 2x12 by 12 foot was $12. So all told, I'm right around $20 so far. Once I get the hardware and a few other things for it, I'm probably going to be somewhere around $35 to $40 for this entire project. So it's a really, really cheap tool. It just requires some time. So the first thing we have to do is take this 2x12 and rip it down into a 4-inch wide strip and a 7-inch wide strip. Now I'm going to be choosing which side of this has more knots and which side has less, and trying to get it on the right side. This one particularly has more knots on this side, so I'm going to leave that as the 7-inch side, so it's a little bit stronger. And then the straighter, longer grain on here is going to be the 4-inch side. So I'm going to make a cut in 4 inches from this side, and then whatever's left over will be my stock for the 2 uprights and a few other things. Particularly the things I'm looking for in the lumber are straight grain. Specifically in the hickory, because this will be the bending item, I want this grain to be perfectly straight. So when I bought it, I'm eyeing down it and I'm making sure all the grain is going relatively straight. This does have a little bit of curve into it, but not much. Now if I really wanted to go out and get the good stuff, I'm going to go get a larger stick and I'm going to rive it out so that I know it's straight grain from one end to the other. But they don't have that at the big box store, so I'm going to work with what I've got. Sometime in the future, I may get tired of this and go out and spend the money and get a better piece. But for right now, I'm just going to go with the cheap stuff that just about anyone can pick up at their hardware store. For the 2x12, one thing I particularly want to look at is I want to make sure that the pith is not running through the middle of this board. On some boards, you'll find that the heart or the pith, the center of the tree, is actually running through the center of the board. And we don't want that here because that will create a weak point. I want to find something that's more flat sawn. So you're seeing these rings being mostly flat. And by the time you get out here, they're running at basically a 45, which is a rift sawn cut. So this stock will allow me to have a little bit more strength. Also, as you see, the center of the tree is more over this way. I'm going to cut my 7 inches out of here and my 4 inches out of here. And this will give me a little bit stronger, more stable grain that will work for this project. Obviously, I'm also trying to find boards that have less knots. This one has several knots in it from one end to the other. This particular knot comes in here and comes out here, but from the other side you don't see the knot at all. And a lot of these knots go straight through the board as they're in the center, as that branch would be sticking out the other side. So I'm looking for as few as possible, but if there's knots in it, oh well, I'm going to try and make my cuts around that and save the pieces as much as possible. So let's get to this and start ripping it down into the stock that we need. So first thing we need to do is rip a big cut all the way down this 12-foot long. So I'm going to use my panel gauge, and I made this a while ago if you want to see the video on that, to make a line 7 inches in from one side, leaving about 4 inches on the other side. I can just trace that line and then start cutting it. Here I have the board set up on the saw bench, and in the next shot you can see here I clamp it. And then the other end is held by a chair of the same height or a similar height. And I just slowly work my way down the board, 12 foot long. Yeah, it was somewhat repetitive and somewhat, well, boring, except for there's no hole to be bored. I'm just having a lot of fun, actually. Pine cuts very easily, and once you get into a rhythm, it's not too hard just to continue on down and march your way down the board. And before you know it, you're done. Ended up taking about 10 minutes to cut this whole thing down, and it was very well, rewarding when it was done. Now we need to cross-cut everything to length. Here you can see the hickory rod that will be the spring for this, so I can cut that down, and then we can move on to the stretchers that go and actually connect the two uprights. There are 3 of these, which is kind of nice because this 12-foot long piece gets cut into 4 4-foot long sections. And these will then get a tenon on either end and separate the legs. Making sure that things don't fall off, I can hold the board through the buck saw. And a buck saw is a very useful thing for a rough crosscut. I don't really care about the quality here, I'm just going to town on it. Here you can see I'm trying to do it one-handed, holding one end, but yeah, it's not great form, but it works. This thing is very fast and a lot of fun to play with. So yeah, that was a lot of cutting. Let's build something. And there you go. My knockdown lathe is ready to be knocked up. Okay, maybe not. But yes, I am really looking forward to this series, and I hope you are too. There's going to be a lot of fun coming up here with this lathe, and I'm looking forward to getting it together. This will be a lot of fun. So I hope you like this. I know I didn't get into a whole lot of the build. I just wanted to kind of introduce you to the project, show you basically how it all gets chopped apart and put together from here. So we'll be having a lot more fun with this in the future, and I am looking forward to getting all these videos out. There should be 2 or 3 other videos on the actual build itself, and then there will be many more to come where I'll be building things on it and showing you how to work on a spring pole lathe. So I'm looking forward to this. Hope you are too. I do want to say thank you to the patrons on Patreon. You guys are the reason why I can do things like this. Without you, this channel would not be here, so thank you. If you'd like to find out more about that or help out with Patreon, you can do that right down there. Also, if you'd like to subscribe or like the video, you can do that as well. I do have a podcast with 2 of my friends if you'd like to find out more about that. And until next time, have a wonderful day.